So now the next stage for me would be find some additional papers. I will often go for book text. I have a couple of old textbooks. One's by Robert Henri, The Art Spirit. That one's got some nice pieces of text in it. And then my husband sacrificed his old Laws of Thermodynamics, which has actually got some kind of interesting things in it as well. And if for no other reason, it's just got chunks of text. So I'll be using text, printed or otherwise, as shapes, simply as shapes. Whether or not I use some text for text's sake as a actual piece in there will come later. And then the other thing I'll probably also do is decide if there is some sort of mid-tone things. So these are all background elements. I might add some of the lighter positives or negatives in amongst the rest of this stuff of the botanicals. We'll have to see. But that's the next step. Wade through all the papers, decide which ones might be useful. Maybe it's little strips, maybe it's larger chunks. We'll have to see. And so goes the building up of the piece. So I've progressed a little further on this. I have found some very nice, light, fairly neutral papers with some things on it that just sort of resonated with me. And I've put them into a few of the background areas. So I'm feeling like it needs some blocks of text. So I've got all kinds of little scrappy things, and of course I have full pages of text I can rip up. But I've selected out a few to put on this. So I like these for a couple of reasons. I find the text itself interesting. It's man-made. It's a symbol of the man-made side of our environment. And I can make interesting shapes out of it on its own. So it has a shape, it has a texture, and it has a bit of a meaning. So, basically I'm kind of just looking around for places that might benefit from that. Some of these have torn edges, and I might even tear them a little bit further if I need to put them in a specific place. I was thinking of somewhere like that for that one. Not quite kissing that, but underpinning this. And this has quite visible text. This says Chapter 5, the second law of thermodynamics, statement of the second law, and then it's torn off. And again, that sort of fits in with the theme here that I'm doing. This one's torn on both sides. And it actually has a little bit of paint on this side. It got printed with the jelly plate at one point, but the color doesn't really work with this color scheme. And frankly, I'm not sure I'm going to get to a painting in the near future that has that in it. It's not one of the ones that speaks to me. So I'm just going to use the other side. I do have to bear in mind that a little of that may bleed through. But yeah, I was thinking of that, touching the edge over there. Not quite touching that edge, and just basically cutting off that circle a little bit. Thought that was interesting. This is a long, narrow strip, so I want to take a look at where I could take advantage of that. I know I want something up there, but I think that may go too far. And this is one that's been jelly printed in a color that matches what's going on in here. So the text itself is not particularly important. It's more important as a shape. And I was thinking of putting that down in there somewhere. This one also has a very faint amount of printing on it, just enough to make it a little bit more interesting. And I think it could go somewhere in there. Let me shove it back and forth and up and down a bit. If I do this, it's too much like it. The flowers are growing out of it. So I would need to lift them slightly. Mind you, the flowers may not end up looking like that in the final thing anyway. But, you know, you always try to work with what's there. Maybe bring it over to the half circle here. I'll let that sit there for a little while. Now I did want something up there. This is actually from the art book. So that one has, I could leave the text in the correct direction there. And it could fit in there, or perhaps a little shorter. Yeah. So I've got a couple of floaty pieces, and I've got some pieces that are anchored to the edges, which I do like. This might end up being part of a center of interest or a focal point down the road, but can't guarantee anything like that for now. So that's the process at this stage. I'll find little bits of paper or bigger bits of paper. I will look at them. I will see if they make an addition. Sometimes I'll use paper later in the process, to paper like this with the text on it, that's opaque paper, and I will use it to go over top of something I really don't like. So if I really decided there was some area in here, I'd overworked it, I killed it, whatever, then I wouldn't at all mind just taking a large piece of paper, covering that up, and then making that fit in with the painting again. So very, very much at this stage, a work in progress. So I got busy working on this, and kind of just got into the zone with it and brought it pretty much to completion. So the next video, the next set in this series, which is going to be about adding paint to the thing, has already been done on this one. I'll be using a different canvas for that video, but I just thought you might like to see how it turned out. I brought in some transparent paint, glazes, to darken up areas that I felt just needed a bit more punch. Sometimes that was quite selectively so that it had the effect of emphasizing, for example, stripes. I added some really thin collage papers which brought different motifs from one section into another. Some of the text, which you saw me add earlier, has been partially worked over, and again some additional thin tissues brought into those areas. This one was interrupted with a piece of tissue so that part of the text is under this area and part of it is revealed. I've also worked with opaque paint to add background tones to some of the sections, clarify certain areas, and added some white to emphasize this piece of botanical. And this piece of botanical that comes up from the bottom and kind of comes into this area, I think this sort of pulls it all together. I've also used some opaque white to emphasize things inside of other things. So there's many layers going on here. Right back at the beginning, you saw me fiddle with this little background piece, which was a fairly faint circle inside of corrugated cardboard textured jelly tissue print thing. So now that original piece of collage went underneath this piece of text, which was torn, which has now gone underneath this little piece of collage and this piece of collage, as well as these two little pieces of collage over here. And to a large degree, all of these have been also modified by paint. And generally I'll use the paint fairly thinly, but sometimes I'll go in with a bit bolder paint to push some areas into the background, or like I say, with some lighter paint to bring it to the surface. So this is where this painting sits as of now, and I'm quite happy with it at the moment. Now down the road I may look at it and go, oh, that needs something, but not for the moment. So at the moment I would call it done. So I'll just give you a little bit of a close-up look of a few of the areas. Some of the motifs have been repeated in certain areas using a textured stamp that I've used directly into the paint on the canvas. And the next video will be showing you a variety of these types of techniques that I use. So that's the last that you'll be seeing of that one. And this is the one that I'll be using for the adding paint demonstration. This one was built up in a very similar way as to the last one, with some larger pieces of tissue, tissue over tissue, some opaque jelly printed stuff over that. Of course, my pieces of text, little piece of a diagram from my husband's thermodynamics textbook. And I've already done a little bit of glazing into this, which I have on video that I'll show you. And I'll be doing a lot more paint and hopefully being able to bring this one to completion during the next video.